Good morning, everybody. Happy Equinox today. I'm recording this on Sunday, March 20th. It's a little after 9 a.m. Dragon is with me here. And yeah, we're beginning our spring process here in the Northern Hemisphere and the fall process in the Southern Hemisphere. So I'm going to read something. Before we get started, I am going to look at the astrology. We're going to look at the encoded signatures for this particular new year beginnings, because that's what we're looking at here. This is a cycle of a new annual cycle. This is really the new year, the spring. And for those of you in the South, this is also a new cycle, but you're moving into a different process of inner work versus the externalized outward work. So let me go ahead and read this. This is written by Chanka. And it just has to do with the Aries archetypal energetics that are activated now. Aries power uses the light by chemically transmuting its solar power into the energy of growth and individualization. Use it by allowing inner fires of enthusiasm and desire to motivate the expression of your uniqueness in new and challenging ways. Courageously take initiatives that will enable you to show your true colors. Just a short, brief couple of sentences there. Now, I have the astrology. Let's go ahead and pull it up. I'm also going to pull up some Sabian symbology with regards to the signature for this cycle, okay? So here we have, in fact, what I'd like to do, I'm just going to go ahead and edit this chart. We're going to label it Equinox. Here we go, 2022. Beautiful. Now, you can see here that the time is Eastern time. So 11:33/4, somewhere close to 11:34, but it's actually in the 11:33 numerical encoding, just FYI. Like, for example, in my moon diary, it's 11:33, but this will round up accordingly. So here we are at the 00 sun, just entering Aries, and this is our date, and this is our Eastern time frame, our geographic time zone, and here's our time. So let's take a look at this. Now, one of the key things that I noticed right off the bat is that we have a 29-degree moon here. A Venus-ruled moon in Libra at the very end of its own, relationship house, the 7th house. We have the sun right here on the ascendant, which is absolutely appropriate for this particular chart reading because it is the beginning of the zodiacal cycle. So let's take a look at what we have. The moon. I definitely want to pull up the Sabian symbology for this moon. You can see that the moon is exactly squaring the part of fortune. And it's with Pluto. And I want to look at that. I mean, I haven't researched it yet, so I'm going to look at it. We're going to analyze it together here. We also have these points trining Sedna and as well the North Node. And we also have Mars still with Venus. And these also are all conjunct, meaning Mars is within a 10-degree orb of Saturn. Venus is right here. So we have all of these planets, this little stellium, conjunct together in Aquarius. And these points are trining Lilith. And these are sextiling Chiron. So we have an exact sextile between Chiron and Lilith here. Black Moon Lilith. And this is creating this grand minor trine here, which is really interesting. So we definitely want to look at that as well. With regards to the South Node at 23, we have an exact trine to Neptune, which has an exact sextile to the North Node. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. And even Venus at 13. Really interesting. Okay. Let's start with the moon. So we have the moon, first of all, over in Libra. Now, there's something here with regards to relationships. There's emotional lessons to learn and assimilate when it comes to relationships. Who is it that you love and value? Who is it that you want to have relationships with? Who is it that you no longer want to have relationships with? There's something with regards to a need to sever or tidy up and forgive. You know, forgiveness is a part of the narrative here as well. There's something here about really kind of completions with regards to understanding what you want with the relationships in your life. What kind of people do you want to be around? Who is it that you want in your sphere? And the flow of energy is correlated to a death rebirth process. So that can talk about completions when it comes to certain relationships. Saying goodbye or severing, you know, with regards to certain things. Saying no, creating boundaries where needed, where necessary. And it might have to do with people with regards to the new path forward. So in other words, people from your past, you know, people that have been a part of your journey. You're either going to make a behavioral change with regards to those relationships, or you're going to create a physical change with regards to those relationships. So that is happening. And there is a maturity, an emotional level of maturity that really can be enacted at this time with that 29 degree. It's lessons learned. It's understandings assimilated kind of energy. Now, for some people, this can look like major regression. This can look like a neediness. There can be, for example, for some people, this can look like obsessive compulsive behavior when it comes to love relationships, or obsessive compulsive behavior when it comes to old patterns of codependency. I need the other person in order to be myself. I need the other person in order to be happy. I need the other person in order to be stable. I need the other person in order to know my power. I mean, it could be any number of things. But there's a codependency issue here that can create havoc for some people that are not awake or not aware of their own patterning, their own mind, their own patterns and processes and stories. So, for some people, this can look like great levels of emotional maturity and learnings and lessons learned and new relationships formed or maturation of the existing relationships that are had. In other words, you're changing things that need to be changed with the dynamic of those relationships, and this is appropriate. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and pop up the Sabian symbol, 29 degrees Libra. So let's take a look. We're going to go to the full explication here. Okay. 29 to 30. Okay. So this is what we want. Let's take a look here. Beautiful. 3 mounds of knowledge on a philosopher's head. The keynote. The fulfillment of human power of understanding at whatever level of existence the person operates. The fulfillment of a person's power of understanding. This is lessons learned at whatever existence the person operates. So people are metabolizing stories or patterns with relationships at this time, I would say. This is for the year ahead, by the way. This is what we're looking at here is the signature for the year ahead. A signature. There's multiple signatures for our cycles, but this is definitely an imprinted signature for the growth for this year ahead. Okay. A true philosopher is a person who is able to understand, not merely know. So this is assimilation versus just having knowledge, keeping it in the cognitive mind. Or in the frontal cortex, you know. The processes of life as he or she comes to experience them directly. He or she is the person of wisdom, different indeed from the person of science. For while there must be knowledge before understanding, knowledge alone can be both barren and destructive of wisdom. This particular symbol refers, of course, to phrenology, which is usually considered a pseudoscience, but may provide significant indications. Number 3 always indicates a state of completion. That's interesting. I've never heard that, but it makes sense. 3, of course, is two entities coming together, the birth of the relational third. So the third is always something in between the two that emerges. But I've never heard it in terms of completion. That's interesting. So number 3 always indicates a state of completion. And by the way, take everything with a grain of salt. You know, this was written by a man in the early 70s who was wise, yes, intuitive, yes, but he was also a person interpreting his life experience through his own filter. So take it with a grain of salt. Take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Okay. The symbol implies a fulfillment of philosophical understanding, which obviously has nothing to do with academic degrees or the writing of successful treatises on abstract concepts. This 5th stage symbol is the last of the Libra series, understanding and wisdom development in terms of the life of community and through experiences provided by interpersonal and group relationships. Cultural factors are always involved, even though true wisdom transcends cultural values and is rooted in the essential nature of humans. What is at stake here is a holistic approach to knowledge based on universals. So this is about universal truths. It's about understanding the broader organizing principles of living systems. So there is an assimilation process at hand with this moon. The square to Pluto can mean that it can bring instigated growth, or it can bring instigated obsessions or instigated kind of death constructs. You know, for example, for some people out in the world, this kind of dynamic can talk about death of the feminine, death of woman, death of women, death of intuition, death of nature, death of receptivity or gentleness or softness or grace. You know, there's also that. So there are going to be people that are taking up that shadowed iteration, the lower frequency iteration of this square. But for other people, this is like a challenge for growth. This is an assimilation of wisdom and learning. This is doing what's needed in order to operate in your own best interest for your life forward, but also, as you are inherently connected with the whole, it's your own growth that innately, if it's aligned with your higher iteration, it innately activates benefic things for the whole system. So as you align, so the whole aligns, as within, so without. With regards to this 28 Sedna to 28 Pluto, you know, Sedna is this individuated girl, this feminine construct, who is strong and independent and free-willed, but is not allowed to express that or act on her own behalf, make her own decisions. She's betrayed. She's ultimately killed by her father. But the trine here can mean courageousness, individuality, and bravery in regards to taking the steps to cut away what is no longer needed. So the trine here can bring about that process. But there can be fear, there can be insecurity, there can be distrust that's also part of, and it's what's tied to the growth edge here. In other words, the North Node is very close to the Sedna. So the growth here is to confront certain fears. There's a necessity for courage at this time frame, and it does require saying goodbye to things that no longer serve your greatest good, your own alignment to yourself, etc. We have the church bells going. I hope you can hear them. I'm going to miss the church bells here. I live down the street from the church, and I love that. Okay, Venus and Mars are still conjunct, but notice that we have a 10 and we have a 13. We also have a 20. So we have a 1, 0, a 2, 0, and then we have nature in between. Natural process. Natural process. With regards to connections with groups, relationships, love, warmth, affection, gentleness, vibrancy, you know, that kind of beautiful vibrancy, that beauty, attraction, sexuality, intrigue. There's a dynamism here. And this is connected by trine down to Lilith. So is Mars, so is Saturn. But the three of these together, you know, kind of part of the signature for this year ahead, my goodness, there's a lot to say about this, because this archetypal combination and the relationships that are connected here are going to bring about different things. One, there can be aggression toward women here. I mean, there can be. There can be aggression toward women here, especially, I mean, there is this square too. You can see the nodal axis is here, and you can see the square to this stellium. Specifically Venus and Saturn. Saturn is really at the pinnacle point of this square with the nodal axis. And so this can talk about, there's a growth edge here as we navigate away from certain patterns and really imbibe new patterning, and of course incorporate gifts and skills from each, but step into the new stable state of operation while utilizing benefic qualities here and bringing them forward as you step into this new sense of self-love, self-worth, self-confidence, self-sustainability, manifestation, you know, being your own creator of your life. Letting go of toxicity and codependency that no longer serves, and stepping into your own abilities here and having confidence in those abilities. Saturn is squaring this journey. But in this signature, so is Venus. So with Saturn squaring the nodes, and we have had this happening for a while now. We've had Saturn squaring the nodes for a little while, and we're going to have it happen for a little while longer. So about the last month, and for the next month, let's say, this spring, you know, late winter, early spring in the north. So with regards to Saturn, though, Saturn talks about many things. It can talk about limits out in the world, limits with communities or society or friend groups, limits with connecting with them. It can talk about challenges and limits, but it can also talk about walls and borders and things that make connection hard. So there can be all of that. But Saturn ultimately is showing where there will be challenges, but there's necessity for the challenge and the limitation there because there's growth needed in this area. So the growth needed, and the big lesson that we're all going through, the growth needed is humanitarian orientation. That we are all brothers and sisters, that we are all connected here. And there's a need to understand and know that, and to step up and do what we can do, as opposed to relying on the other to do it. You know, there's this kind of, I'm going to step up and be responsible for the group. I'm going to give you an example. There's a wonderful man from England, central England, I think. And he, I don't know what he does for his living. I don't know if he's a contractor or if he was in business or a lawyer maybe. I can't remember. But this is like a middle-aged man who has his own business. He has his own life and work. But he was so turned upside down by what was happening with Ukraine, and specifically with things that were happening with the animals. Like people who left, who had to leave their homes, took their animals. Often they took their animals and they took them on leashes. They were carrying them. They were in carriers. They took their pets. But once they got to train stations, oftentimes, if not all the time, they had to leave their pets at the train station. So they were tied to a pole or they were left in the carrier. And so animals were abandoned, not able to go with their families that already had enough trauma. So this man heard about this and he literally got in a truck and drove to like the Polish border and started scooping up animals and then arranging for their care in these different facilities. And there were a lot of people showing up. Like there were a lot of compassionate groups and individuals that were showing up to help, but he was one of them. And he has a fundraiser and he's getting more trucks and a lot of people are helping him. And, you know, it's like it's become a whole thing. So now he's bringing loads of food and supplies and, you know, and they're rehoming these animals. They're chipping them when needed and giving them vaccinations when needed. I mean, there's a whole thing happening. But that's what this is here. It's like tapping into the depths of suffering and doing what's needed and being responsible for the collective and playing the role. It's that. Exactly what I just stated. And there's lots of people doing that, by the way. Lots of people stepping up because there's compassion, there's love, there's action to be taken with regards to our brothers and sisters who are suffering on this planet. And so this is a part of this journey forward in this year ahead. In addition to that, there's other ways by which this can manifest. Lower iterations of this can be aggression. There can be imprisonment of women or aggression toward women or aggression toward love and compassion or aggression toward nature. You know, there can be all this kind of, you know, rigid, focused, left-brained thought devoid of morality, especially with an Aquarius-Uranus orientation. This can be a bit callous, very cold, and very disconnected from humanity and compassion. So there can be a lot of action and aggressive action in some cases taken by some people. So that's also happening. So, it depends on how people are going to choose to behave and what choices they're going to make with regards to this trajectory forward, this chapter forward. The connection, the grand minor trine here is fantastic. Now, the connection here, Mars and Venus are both trining Lilith, Black Moon Lilith. Again, there can be bravery here. There can be courage here. There can be facing fears here. There can be stepping out and being outspoken here, especially because it's in Gemini and it's at number 11. You know, and we have an 11 Chiron here. So there's a lot of enlightened mindset that can activate here and bring forward enlightened action on behalf of the collective. Really beautiful. The exact sextile here between Lilith and Chiron. 11:11. So, and this is about self-healing. So there's a level of enlightenment that people are finally starting to wake up, that the healing out in the world lives within the self. And the only mastery that you have is healing the self. And when you heal the self, you heal the collective. So the more people heal themselves, the more they heal the collective. And that's part of the work. In fact, it's intrinsic part of the work this year. More and more people are really waking up to deeper truths this year because of the South Node transit in Scorpio. Finally. It's already happening. There's a lot of, people, there's a lot of correlation to some of these summits. There's been a health summit, of course, but then there was other things. There's been other the Changing of the Gods series and all kinds of things that have been occurring since the last month. But certain things started to trigger in January. And I would say that more and more and more people are going to really wake up to foundational concepts of reality and really what the truth is. So this level of enlightened self-healing activating so beautifully with Black Moon Lilith, being true to yourself, being honest with yourself. People might not want to hear it. And look, we have a 911 here too, which is interesting, a 911. So we have Ceres with Black Moon Lilith. So there can be this level of, there are going to be moments this year of retraction, becoming the hermit, needing to go within and reflect. There is going to be that. But there's also going to be courageous action. There's going to be this going within because there will be some insecurity coming up. Not everybody's going to want to hear what you have to say. Not everybody's going to want to communicate. And there can be this kind of aspect of insecurity that arises from these processes. So that's going to happen too. But there's also going to be these moments of confident spoken, confident mental clarity and confident spoken word that's going to bring forward you as the master teacher healer, and then the connection of impacting the collective in a way that's necessary now. More and more people stepping up to impact the collective is simply necessary. Now, we also have this square. So we have Uranus squaring that Mars. See, this particular square activation will bring sudden violence. Over this year ahead, we will see sudden violence. There can be sudden violence toward groups of people. Why? Because of the sign that it's in. And because of what it's connected to. Uranus ruling that Mars, squaring itself, So there can be sudden violence, sudden brutality, sudden passion. There can also be sudden action taken, sudden inspiration, instigating humanitarian action. There can be breakthroughs also with this square. Depends on the iteration of the person, their energetic frequency, and what they're choosing. So there can be cruelty and brutality with this, but there can also be revelation and breakthrough and advanced actions taken on behalf of and rolling with the punches with regards to the changes being made out in the world. With regards to Mercury, now we have Mercury conjunct Jupiter. This is the signature for the year. And it is with Neptune as well. So all of, we have these tightly conjunct and we have all of these conjunct. And all of them are trining the nodes and sextiling the north node. Trining the south, sextiling the north. So there's a lot of deeper knowledge, deeper shadowed awarenesses coming to the fore and informing, karmically appropriate, by the way, karmically at this time frame, at this cycle, at this revolution in the human story and its evolution, correctly karmically, there's a new level of awakened mind happening. New understandings, new assimilated understandings, new mental clarity, new expanded mind, Neptunian mind, understanding of how the source field works, how it operates. It's not rigid. There's magic and numinous qualities in the functionality of natural systems, of consciousness systems. So there's all kinds of allowance, surrender, empowerment, compassion, empathy, love, deeper understandings, deeper sense of self-love and self-confidence that's going to impact that collective in ways that are necessary. So there can be this kind of radical, beautiful way by which, and even the mind, it's sextiling Black Moon Lilith here. So, and it's also sextiling Ceres. So there can be this kind of flow of, this kind of understanding of the need. And by the way, let's just say this, because the moon is at a critical final degree of a Venusian sign, there's a lot about the feminine that is activated this year, a lot. There's going to be a lot more, even more. We already have so many women really kind of coming onto the stage kind of in droves, but it's even going to be more this year. And what I would say with this activation of Mercury Lilith sextile with the 11 here is there can be a new level of honoring what women have gone through. Now, we know intellectually, like we have the history tabulated. It's not like we don't understand it, but there's going to be a deeper level of understanding how the feminine has been repressed and mutated to such a degree that that's huge to kind of the deeper strata of psychological deep dive shadow work that is to be done. It must be done. It has to be done, and it will. There's a natural drive to do it, to have it done. Very powerful, this, very powerful. Actually, you know what? I apologize. Let me clarify something. I got it wrong. Okay, let me clarify what I just said because it was wrong. Mercury is sextiling Uranus. Mercury is sextiling Uranus. It's squaring Lilith. Okay, so let me reframe everything I just said. The square is not showing, by the way. Okay, so you're not seeing the red line, but Mercury is actually squaring Gemini, the Lilith, Black Moon Lilith. Now, the square can mean that there can be some confusion that emerges this year and some insecurities that do emerge this year with regards to all I really want, what I'm focused on is peace, what I'm focused on is love, what I'm focused on is compassion and care and charity. But yet, the mind might be angry. My language might be angry. It might be aggressive. So there's this kind of, to the individual, there can be this inner conversation going on where you could shame yourself or guilt yourself into thinking, well, why is there such cruelty in my thoughts? Why am I having such awful thoughts about, certain things? Or why am I speaking so aggressively? Or why am I so angry? There can be this inner, deeper, unconscious self-shaming that can occur, and there can be a little bit of confusion with regards to it as well. So mindfulness, this is just about self-awareness. This is about being aware. So you hold both, is what the truth is. You're going to hold the desire here. The mental orientation is that of spirituality and spiritual growth and peace and quiet and stillness and love, living a life of love and peace, when really the outer reality or that in your environment might be a little bit more aggressive or outspoken. There can be, for some people as well, siblings that are going to create karmic, like it can be a karmic chapter of argument and issue that's going to have to be confronted. And what's happening here is there's a little bit of a test. So part of the growth edge with Lilith here, specifically, I mean, Ceres can show where you will feel abundant flow. For you, thoughts are flowing and your communications might be flowing as well. But there's also going to be times of retraction with Ceres, especially with the number 9. But you're also going to retract too. So you're going to express and then you're going to stop. There's going to be moments this year where you will just step back. And for some of you with siblings, this is also going to happen with siblings. There could be arguments. There could be areas where you have to confront certain topics, deeper topics that you might want to avoid. Okay? And there might be levels of stepping back from the sibling. Okay? It can happen too with the people in your local environment as well. The people in your world, your immediate world. But yeah, but the sextile that we have from Mercury to Uranus, this is revelatory. This can bring insights. This can bring opportunity, and it can bring an evolved sense of self-love, self-worth that's impacting the Neptunian right brain function of the mind that's allowing you to evolve. Evolve your thinking, evolve your thoughts, evolve your understandings. Powerful. Powerful. I mean, This is also going to bring a flow of like ideas, insights, products, money, you know, things that will be beneficial to the collective, but also earn you money or income. You know, there can be financial stability or foundations that can get created, insights with regards to money, income, insights with regards to safety, security, insights with regards to food and diet, insights with regards to a higher level of living, a more evolved way of living with the earth. You know, generally this is going to be happening throughout the year. More evolved ideas, images coming to life. What comes up in the imagination, thoughts become things. So there's a lot of thoughts becoming things here. A lot. And there can be a rapidity to it, like rapidly thoughts are becoming things. Thoughts are becoming things. So this might be happening quite a bit this year, everybody. Very exciting. Let's take a look at that Mercury position in the Sabian symbols. So 17 to 18 degrees Pisces. Let's take a look. 17 to 18 Pisces. An Easter parade. The capacity inherent in all great socio-cultural images to unite the members of a community in a display of excellence. Here we see, by contrast, the unifying power of great myths and symbols in truly organic and self-perpetuating culture. The image of the resurrection spurs all humans within the pale of Christendom to appear at their very best and to dynamize themselves in some kind of self-renewal in response to the Christ mythos, and the call of nature's springtime as well. Wherever found, the symbol emphasizes the value of attuning one's life's activities and moods to the ritualistic patterns of society or earth nature, rather than acting in complete independence from the group. So keep in mind, this is the mindset, this is the kind of the way of operating and the focus of the mind over the next year. At this second stage of the fivefold subcycle, the collective dominates the individual. Yin overpowers yang. It is time for conformity to what constitutes the higher ideals of one's culture and for participation in collective peak experiences. So you can see that there's a lot here about renewal and about the collective, about group. So very, very highly, totally, completely aligned. Where the mind is activated, first of all, inherently with the Pisces rulership, there is simply more right brain activation happening. So for people that are already very right brain functioned, very reliant on their right brain and not so much left brain, there's growth edges here. Naturally. In fact, there is even for those that aren't, for those that are starting to access or starting to value the functionings of the right brain. There's growth edges here as well. Why? Because there's growth edges with every single functionality in the signature. Every single point. The moon, the south node functioning, Pluto, Mars, Venus, and Saturn functioning, your own internalized functioning. These are growth edges. And for the collective. But for you, these are your own processes of upgrading that are called. This function of Mars, how do you behave in the group? How do you relate to the group? How are you angry at belonging or not belonging to the group? How do you value the group or not? What's the relationship here with groups of women, for example? Like, for example, what I see happening here a lot in this coming year will be greater collectivities of women forming. So minor groups, they can be micro groups or macro groups. Groups of 4 women or 18 women or 150 women or 10,000 women. But groups of women I see happening. And these collectives are strong. I mean, we work stronger together. So there is the call to action, but it is a growth edge, though. I mean, this is the push. This is the natural signature for the growth to occur. But it doesn't mean that everybody's going to choose it. Some people are going to choose to stay alone or independent or separated from the group. And that's a choice. That's the free will choice. But the growth edge inherently is connection and working on behalf of the group, creating impassioned leadership with regards to what's needed for the collective. Being responsible, understanding that you are responsible as an individual to the group, because as you are mature, so it impacts the group. As you are immature, so it impacts the group. It's a free will choice, but obviously acting in alignment with your evolutionary self, your higher energetic frequency self, your matured self, is going to impact to a better degree, to a greater, more aligned. Whole systems operate in terms of growth and evolution. So how to evolve best or optimally is going to be through a more matured iteration versus a more devolved iteration. So there's a lot of responsibility, but growth with all of these functions. Same with the mind. So the mind this year ahead is requiring a greater level of, 1, activation of right brain functioning, 2, integration of right brain functioning into left brain, which is the dominant paradigm in our world today. Still. You know, for the last several hundred years, it's been dominant, and here it is, it's still dominant. And what happens, by the way, everybody, what happens is that when the right brain gets activated, when the left brain has been dominant, meaning society has valued analytic mental function over feeling and holistic understandings and perceptions, when the left brain has been dominant and the right brain gets activated, that can float the other way to the other extreme. So it can be hyper influenced, like very influenced. It can be very, I'm going to just succumb to God, whatever an individual's idea of God is. You know, it can be, I'm just all love and light. I'm all love and light. There's no darkness here. The benefit to this correlation is that the darkness, the aspects of your past, of your history, of your patterns, must come into play. So, see, that's going to be the benefit for some people and the non-benefit for others. People that are rejecting their own shame, guilt, past, and pain, their own patterning, their own history, their own experiences that they hold inside their psyche, those that will refuse it will have trouble here because there's a denial and there's an integration that's actually the growth here. Integration. So it's left and right hemispheres both. It's dark and light aspects of life both. It's past and future both. It's a dependency upon each other while you're stepping into your own confident independence both. It's always both and. Life is always both and. So this is a growth edge. And especially Mercury with Jupiter and Neptune, my goodness, for some people, this can look like out of their heads, not grounded, not clear, totally overcompensating in the right brain functioning. Now, this can bring psychic activity, this can bring deep intuitive knowing, this can bring heightened spiritual elevated processes. No question about that. But this can also be deep delusion and deep deception. So it depends on where you're going to choose it. It will be an individual's choice. If they're going to stay in distraction, and if you're going to stay in karmic process, that's also a choice here. This, as you've heard me say many times before, the South Node transit through Scorpio for this 18 months is pure potential. It's active potential. There's great ability, naturally activated now, to become in contact, to connect with your deepest unconscious narratives and to release yourself from those patterns. But it has to be a choice. And what's going to happen here is some people could live in fantasy or live in procrastination or live in distraction. And these are going to create issues for those people, because the more you push off the integration of all of who you are, including all of the deep, dark stuff inside, all of your experiential processes that you are skewing through a filtered memory filter, and not actually seeing it for what it is, understanding what it is, and integrating it into a wholeness of being, then there's going to be trouble for those that don't do that. But for those that do it, my God, I mean, this is a time for huge freedom. I mean, just really massive. This can be a massive upgrade in the patterns that you've been unconsciously walking and oriented in for millennia. Because we're not just talking about this particular life stream. We're talking about all of them. We're talking about all of them. All that you hold. All of these experiential memory signatures that you hold. These life experiences that you hold. You're holding it. Each person is holding it according to their specific blueprint. So, immense potential for radical release and radical upleveling to clarity and groundedness, as opposed to floating off in delusion or, some other narrative. And for those people that choose not to do it, that's part of, a chosen desire to keep continuing with their existing karmic patterning. Unnecessary. It's a choice. But some people will choose to continue. Definitely. Okay? So massive, massive signature. Beautiful signature for the year ahead, everybody. Absolutely tremendous. I'm going to leave it there. I'm sending you so much love for this Equinox day and for this year ahead. And I'm sending you all so much love, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.